As I've worked with the stones and listened to the stones and moved them around, I began to understand that they only come alive in the human hand.
As a designer, it's not that different from being a choreographer. You're designing how a group of people's bodies will move together, and yet you're talking about the static nature of the stones, and there is so much movement in your jewelry. Many images are little creatures and little beings that have arms going up and legs, and they are in flight. I think there's even one pendant of yours that is called something like Girl on the Move, or I may have the title wrong, but so always incorporating that movement in the work.
It's true, yeah. I mean, I think that jewelry is a very stationary thing because it's a form, it's hard, you gotta do all kinds of things to make it look right and present itself correctly. And then you put it on a body and it becomes a whole other thing. It then has its own life. And the colored stones, which is really my signature, have all the trace elements of the whole universe. And I never really thought that what I made would be so important to the fabric of people's lives, but I have realized that it is. When I really create, it doesn't come from a busy mind. It comes from a very deep, centered place.
The Orbits is perhaps the one series that you're most well known for, necklaces and bracelets. And this is an orbit. And how many do you have on there?
Here.
And Annie has on one.
She's had for years.
Yeah, exactly. Tell me a little bit about this one and some of the other orbits that we have
This orbit was designed around the moon and Venus.
Right.
Because there was a special alignment. Venus was very close to the moon, and you know it's a little pink planet with a lot of coppery kind of. So I had to choose stones that resonated with that kind of pink glow, which to me is a love energy. And I also had a girlfriend who had recently passed away. Inger had passed away, and so I felt kind of like that piece spoke to women friendships, because somehow the moon and Venus were like two friends that maybe circle around each other and then separate and come together.
And all of these, do they all have that same, as you were talking about, orbiting around the planets in an axis, do they pretty much all start that way for you when you're designing them? Do you have that in mind, or again, does the stones
I think what I've started doing now with them, like this one has a certain color sequence. I started working with strictly stones that were stationary in the orbit, like that, like this. And then I've gravitated, this was the first one I did combining pearls, which orbited around a little axis. And then I've moved to different beads. These are tourmalines here.
Watermelon tourmalines.
Yes, and I love the fact that it's a kinetic thing that moves and shows perhaps an imperfect face of the stone, which can be just as interesting as the perfect face.
One of your most powerful series is the Women's Web. What was the inspiration for that series?
I had a lucid dream, and as you know, jewelry is mostly worn by women, although there's men. I have many wonderful male clients that I can think of. But I had a dream of all the people in the world, but mostly the women, wearing the jewelry, whether it was on their ears or around their neck, but that their hands were connected with long filaments of silvery gold threads connecting them to every other woman on the planet, so that whatever work they did that day, whether it was caring for a child, typing on their computer, helping a patient, teaching school, getting angry, whatever it was they did that expressed the capacity of the human heart to enact what they do best, was connected in this undulating web. Well, it was very alive in my dream, and the silver threads were and I thought I could make the stones be like the different pieces of jewelry and connected in such a way that it wasn't symmetrical. It was very much organic. And so I started a series around the women's web, and it has been a powerful series. The center stone is a blue flash moonstone that's faceted, which is a little unusual, and it's from what used to be called Burma, now Myanmar. And the other stones are spinel, which are a natural stone, very much like a sapphire but more rare, and they're in a parachute cut, and then there's a pink sapphire at the bottom.
Tell us a little bit about what draws you to the gemstones and the minerals.
Well, sometimes it's the shape, sometimes it's the color, and sometimes it's just the look of it and the way it reflects light. This piece I call Alexandra's piece because the stone, as you can see, is kind of a pregnant belly to me, and it has an asteroided star in the center of this rose quartz. And the pearl is like it grows in the belly of the oyster. And so when I was pregnant with Alex, which is my first daughter, she was very much a moon child to me. She's an Aquarius, and so it was about the water. So that was definitely a piece inspired by my daughter. This piece is interesting. It was made as a prayer after the Gulf oil spill, and the pearls and the colors I chose were the oceanic turquoise with little specks of oil. I don't know if you can see, that's a natural inclusion of iron oxide in the mineral. And the copper ore at the bottom was the oil. And then in the water, this part of the oil is the copper-colored pearls, and I wanted somehow for the ocean to be able to absorb that. And it was my way of dealing with this tragedy that affected a place that I had spent many times as a child and taken my children to on the Gulf shore. This was a raccoon penis bone that was found on the shore. I had no idea what it was. I just knew that it was graceful and had an incredible curve. This piece is an ethereal being. We are very much like the Leonardo da Vinci pentapod man with 5 points and connected to the heavens through our brains. And she has her little 5 points down here, and her arms, and her brain that is both the purple, which is the third eye, and the golden, which is the solar plexus energy. So that's who she is. I'm working with people's jewelry and recreating a history that is meaningful to them through a piece of jewelry. So I'm using component parts that may be very disparate, like a piece of inlaid turquoise jewelry is paired with something that a jeweler made that her son gave her that's a special piece of jewelry that she wants that vibration.
So now there is a depth to your pieces, it sounds like, that's come from the relationships that you have with the people you create for.
I think that's a very beautiful way of putting it, exactly. As I've gotten older, I've lost some of the parts of me that used to be able to create, one of which is my lungs. To breathe in the flux is very irritating to my system, so I can no longer solder. And I had a neck injury, and I could no longer sit at the bench, so I had to start asking people to make my jewelry, which was really hard. And I was embarrassed for a long time because I didn't feel right. Like, how can I say this is my design when I didn't make it? I just designed it. And I had to really get past that grasping to own it myself and put it out into the universe and work with these amazing men and women who have manifested my designs. It's been an amazing journey. And I often say that my most steadfast partner has been the mineral kingdom. The artistic process is not something that you choose to be born with. And in many ways it's a curse, and it's also a great blessing because you can't do a whole lot of other things very well because you've got to put so much time into creating. The planet we live on is so beautiful. There's so many different parts of it that speak to me in the color and the leaves and the flowers and the birds and the trees. And I try to express it, but of course you can never come close to the real thing. It's all an approximation. And if it brings somebody joy and makes them feel more beautiful or more wholly who they are than at the end of my life.